In a moment, we'll start collecting clues as to the whys, the whats, and the wheres.
And I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Can you hear that? We will not end the nightmare, we'll only explain it.
Tonight, we'll look into how scientists are bringing back the dead and studying past life phenomenon, which begs the question, are necromancers real, and have they infiltrated science? Finally, we'll dive into the question everyone is thinking about, do machines feel pain? Turns out, a bunch of AI researchers got bored and decided to have fun torturing computers. We'll reveal the results in our OFFnormal segment at the end of the show. I'm your host, Fiasco Jones. Welcome to Oddnormal's What in the Weird. I'm joined by my co-host, Cold Coffee. Want to hear something strange?
I did something different here.
Are you familiar with necromancy?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done it myself, but I know of the term.
What is necromancy?
That's where you bring the dead back from people back from the dead, right?
Yeah, that's right. Do you think there are any ethical issues bringing dead things back to life?
I mean, I would think that if the IRS started doing it to get more money back from people that passed, I would think that'd be pretty shitty of them.
Yeah. What about woolly mammoths? What if someone said we can bring back the extinct woolly mammoth?
I mean, then you're talking, I can see where, the beef industry might be really, really excited about that, But
yes. And I mean, I don't think are mammoths beef. Whatever. Putting that aside.
Do you not think they're beef? What would you think that they are?
I mean, every animal's its own meat, right? Like
yeah,
chicken.
Cows
are beef.
Do you think bison is not beef?
Bison's bison.
You don't consider that beef?
If it was beef, they would call it beef, and so they call it bison. There's very specific.
I mean, they don't call it like bull or steer. They call it beef.
Is a steer a different kind of like animal?
No, it's like a male. That's like a male
bull, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Beef. All right. Well, here's the thing. Colossal Bioscience, a Texas-based biotechnology company, is advancing efforts to resurrect the woolly mammoth, aiming to produce the first calves by 2028. The process involves editing the DNA of Asian elephants, the mammoth's closest living relatives, to include genes responsible for traits like dense fur and cold tolerance. These modified embryos will be implanted into surrogate elephant mothers with the goal of reintroducing these hybrids into the Arctic habitats. My big question is...
Didn't we already see this in a movie?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
that went well.
Did they find like a mosquito in some, amber somewhere and then like take some of the cells out of it or something? I feel like we've seen this before somewhere.
Yeah, and it went super well. I mean, that was a movie. In reality, It's going to go great. The mammoths will not be born like Pet Cemetery demons and just go ramming their tusks into people,
We could hope. I mean,
it would be exciting.
I certainly hope that's how it goes.
And then the Arctic is forever like, don't go anywhere cold. The mammoths are out there. They're like Wendigos. Hold on.
Yeah. Put them in Greenland.
Yeah. And that's how we take over Greenland. We send over an army of
the woolly mammoth
undead woolly mammoths. Beyond the mammoth, by the way, Colossal is exploring the de-extinction of other species such as the Tasmanian tiger and the dodo bird, aiming to enhance biodiversity and strengthen ecosystems. To that point, I would say, what's the point? Because haven't we already proven this ecosystem we live in has rejected them? It said no more of these things, no more dodo birds, no more Tasmanian tigers, no more woolly mammoths. So what? I mean,
at this point, the nature has moved on. Wouldn't that be like in putting back another invasive species that then the whole habitat would have to work itself around again? Like, I mean, like so much has changed. Like nature has changed. The organisms that maybe used to feed them are completely different now. That sounds all bad. It sounds all bad. It sounds all bad.
It also just seems pointless, like absolutely pointless. I mean, going back to your idea of like eating them, I mean, sure. But now you're talking, cows are already environmentally like, problematic as it is, and they're just tiny little cows.
They're tiny versions.
Let's just multiply that by 10 and have at it. And the Arctic's practically gone anyway now. So where are they going to live? I don't know. I just think that the whole idea is a solution looking for a problem. Our world does not need woolly mammoths. It doesn't need Tasmanian tigers. Yeah, I guess for the zoo community, it would be great to see an imprisoned animal in there, another imprisoned animal that's from a bygone era. Like, look, mommy, look at the woolly mammoth. Why is it so sad? Because it was pulled from heaven, Jimmy, and now it has to live and rot here on Earth.
They'll put it in that exhibit next to the tree when they're like, Mommy, what were trees like? Let's go to the zoo and you can see it. It's next to the woolly mammoth.
Right? It's all emaciated. Kill me. There's that. Moving on. Do you believe that Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster exist?
Sure, why not?
What about aliens?
Aliens, I do believe. I'm a believer.
That's good, smart. Do you think it's a wise move to abandon any kind of research in Bigfoot or Loch Ness, trying to see if to really kind of know for certain if they're real or fake?
You mean like if I only had dollars to allocate in one particular area, would I focus them on alien or still continue to look for like Loch Ness Monster or like the
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, if you have a limited
if I had to redirect money, then yeah, I would say do the alien, because at this point, I mean, we've been looking for the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot forever, and if they haven't found them yet, like soon there will be no forest. Where is it hiding?
You can say it's the same as aliens. Same thing for aliens. Where are they?
Where are they? Yeah, no, I would be fine if they finally stopped doing that. I mean, I think at this point it's nice as a folk tale, or something you could say about, be careful if you're in the woods at night, you might run into Bigfoot. Or if you're in the area, like, everybody thinks of like creatures underwater. Oh, it's Nelly, it's the Loch Ness Monster. But at this point, they don't feel the same. They don't have that certain sort of like it factor anymore. I don't think anybody really cares anymore. Most of the kids nowadays have probably never heard of them because if their parents aren't talking about them.
You have just made so many enemies today. Like the number of Bigfoot stands that exist. I mean, that's could count on one hand. They're probably 90% of our show. That's 90% of their audience. So they're clamoring for cryptid news. And you just basically said that you hate them and you hate their ideas. But so does Oxford University biologist Professor Tim Coulson, who has recently addressed the existence of legendary creatures and extraterrestrial life. He asserts that entities like Bigfoot, the Yeti, and the Loch Ness Monster are purely mythical, citing the absence of physical evidence such as skeletons or credible photographs. Yep. Coulson emphasizes the biological improbability of these creatures remain. I see you nodding your head. The biological
I do have a follow-up.
Okay. There's an improbability of these creatures remaining undetected for millennia without leaving any trace. For instance, he notes that for a dinosaur-like creature to have survived in Loch Ness, there would need to be a substantial breeding population persisting for millions of years, which is highly implausible, which I've heard that argument. A lot of it feels like retread kind of stuff from back in the day, because they've always said, like, if there's a plesiosaur in the Loch Ness, it would have to have like a population. Same thing for Bigfoot. You can't sustain a population of big feet, without noticing,
without somebody seeing them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's your follow-up?
Well, I mean, like, it's funny, as much as we're like, oh, let's believe that there's aliens, but on the same sense, because it's the it thing, it's the cool thing. And it's like, the universe is so big. Of course, there's the potential of something out there. But if people say, well, we've never found any trace of Loch Ness, we never found any trace of the Bigfoot outside of whatever, you could say the exact same thing until we have real proof that comes out and says, here it is. What do we have to prove to the alien thing? But nobody's, quick to completely discredit that either, And
the thing is that, so we're kind of like jockeying for proof, because the Bigfoot folks, or I should call them the cryptid folks, they would say there is proof. I just last summer went up to Oregon and I saw the Bigfoot Museum up there, and there's tons of, what would they claim? Proof. There's video evidence. People hear the knocks, the tree knocks. They have the plaster casts.
Does he have some petrified poop in there probably somewhere?
They probably did. It didn't ring a bell. Didn't.
So these people credit all knocks on wood at night to being Bigfoot knocks?
They're not all knocks. There's a sound, a sort of specific sound to it. Yeah.
How does that sound? Can you
I have
mimic
to
it?
pull it up. I don't have a clip of the sound.
Did you hear it yourself?
We'll have a whole cryptid episode, and we'll bring the sounds out for you. Should say that Coulson is like you. He believes it's premature to dismiss the possibility of extraterrestrial life. He points out that humanity has explored only a minuscule portion of the universe, leaving vast areas uncharted. Given this limited exploration, the potential for discovering alien life ranging from simple bacteria to more complex organisms remains an open question, which I feel like of all the, I guess, supernatural creatures or subjects, I think that's why you keep seeing the aliens persisting for so long, because the question, the range where they could live or come from is so broad, but also what we're talking about when we say extraterrestrial life is so broad. It can be a microbe. It can be an advanced, time-eating civilization,
Yep. Well, we always think we're so smart, and like, oh man, humans, we're obviously the brightest people and the greatest species out there. But when you think about how very little, and you touched on it, that we've actually even explored, have we been back to the moon? We're trying to get over to Mars. That's just within our small little planetary system. And that's just a very, very small little bit of what's out there in the universe, So I think when people start to realize, well, wow, in my lifetime, maybe I'll see people get back onto the moon. Maybe I'll go wherever. So to think that there's the potential of so many other life forms further out that we're just not technically able, it's easy to grasp the idea because we can sense that we see in front of us that we're only so knowledgeable on even looking out that way. So it's easy to say, where if we say something lives in the water in the Loch Ness, or if something lives in the woods, we can easily say, well, we can just check that out real quick.
Well, to that point though, it has been quite difficult to do all. They're still talking about doing DNA tests of the water. They're still talking about doing sonar stuff. It always seems incomplete, even though I don't know. And that's probably the nature of cryptid hunting, cryptozoology. Is that they're really, you have to always keep the mystery alive. You can never have certainty, unless you're Coulson and he says, yeah, it's over. And
at some point you just got to say enough's enough. But I think there will always be people that still will be firm believers in what they want to believe, and that they think, well, I'm going to keep looking. But the unfortunate part about like things of like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, if nobody's keeping those flames alive, at some point it's just going to drop out naturally because people have lost interest and forget.
Right.
People aren't telling the stories. That's what keeps every great folklore around, is that people are telling the stories. And if nobody's telling the stories right now, people are just going to forget. There's too much social media and too much this. Did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this? And nobody's telling really, cool stories like this, not keeping it alive. But
the only issue, you're right, story is kind of dying, even though I think social media in a lot of ways is kind of coming back around, and because they're using it in more of a crass commercial way of like content. I need content. So they're going to dig for anything. And if they find more Bigfoot content, if it sticks, guess what? Bigfoot's alive again. Loch Ness is alive again. I would say I applaud those efforts, because to kind of a little bit to your point is the idea of keeping wonder alive. Like the idea that that if you want, yes, you can scrub every iota of wonder and enchantment out of the world and it will run fine. It'll run perfectly. I personally, to me, it's my sunlight. I can't really exist without it. I need to have that wonder in the world. I can eat, drink, and all that stuff. It just wouldn't be as fun though. It'd be like a desert. And so I do applaud the people, like you said, the guys are keeping alive. There is a guy in Loch Ness who's been there since 1980 or something like that, just been sitting on the side of the shore looking for Loch Ness. He's been there the whole time, living out of a fucking trailer. He makes little like figurines. He's keeping it alive though, and people. It's what he creates his own sense of wonder as this kind of dedicated person. And you can criticize how he's used his life to. But hey. He's happy.
If he's happy, that's all that matters is if he's happy. So, but there is something about trying to keep that creative side. I think we've talked about this in the past. Like the people that tend to be drawn towards the mystical and the wonders of the world tend to have a more creative brain. And I think if the powers that be could remove wonder and make everybody just focus on practical matters, then you're going to have people stopping thinking out of the box. We want people thinking out of the box. And I think the people that believe in the folklore and the people that want to dive into the mystical and believe and think about that sort of stuff, those are the creative, those are the artsy people. Those are the creative people that keep that sort of stuff. They keep magic alive, if you will, the people that believe in that sort of stuff. And if people have their ways, they would want people to not believe in magic and wonder in the world. They want you to go to work. They want you to pay your taxes, get married, have babies, and then have them repeat the cycle after you, you know?
Cash flow. They want the cash flow.
They want the cash flow.
Sticking with the idea of beliefs, I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of past lives, past life phenomena. Yeah. Have you ever met anyone that claims that they have had they've had a past life?
Nothing outside of just people thinking like, oh, I feel like I'm an old soul. I feel like I've been here before. I've done stuff, but it's all just more like just talk. I don't think I've ever met anybody that was like, bro, I've lived here. I was a samurai. I remember seeing my death. Like that would be really cool. But unfortunately, I've never met anybody that did that.
Do you think it's real though? Do you think that's a real phenomenon I guess essentially that's the question is, do you believe in reincarnation? Do you believe that there are souls that died and reborn and
sure.
Do you believe that they might recall their past lives? I
mean, that's the crux of it. And I'm about to tell you, I watch a lot of anime and a lot of the isekai and the stories of being reincarnated and transferred into another world, but retaining their memories of their past life. It's a huge genre in animation that I tend to really enjoy because it's kind of fun because because they want even when you watch a lot of the stories, it's the morals. Will you learn from your past life is what they're sort of like when they put these shows out. When people reincarnate, they're like, oh, I might have been shy and whatever, and I let people push me around. But in this new life, in this new world, I'm going to change. I'm going to be something different, So they use these sort of tales. But do I believe that could be reincarnation and other stuff? Sure, of course. And I like the different beliefs, like some, like the Buddhists and stuff, you'll die and you reincarnate and you'll go back in that point of where you were at in your life before until you're able to finally reach that level of enlightenment where you will stop reincarnating.
That's samsara, right? Isn't that the samsara?
Something along those lines, yeah. Do I believe that reincarnation? Sure. I mean, as much as most people can believe that, there's a heaven after this thing, why not have it be where you come back as energy or some sort of other being or, something. I mean, it sounds just as good to me as a belief of a heaven or a hell,
right. One is it keeps like you keep learning. The other one's like, you're done.
Yeah.
You got the life. You're done.
That's it.
It's one of those things of like, well, I mean.
Well, think about this. You think about a lot of religions. There's one of the biggest religions out there, Christianity. Just absolve your sins, say you're sorry, say a few Hail Marys or whatever, and then you're good. You're going to go off to heaven and you're going to be all good. So you could be a piece of shit, but if you find God by the end of your life and you do the right things, you're going to be absolved of your sin. But say this and say with like the reincarnation, if you keep fucking up in your life, you are doomed to not doomed, but you will be slated to come back in this life and try to see if you've learned from your mistakes. Right. That means you really want to do good because if you don't end your life where you've become good or you've reached this enlightened state, you're going to be back again. Whereas in a lot of beliefs, they're like, well, you're good. As long as you just believe this thing by the end.
You're good or you're gone.
And then you're done. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like either you've
which one would you
mastered it or you're going to learn forever.
Well, that's the thing. Which one do you think makes you really want to be a better person in life?
Right.
If knowing that you're going to be either have to come back and figure this out again or just say, hey, whatever, if I say the right things, I'll be absolved of all my sins and I'm going to go to the magical place after this. I think one person's going to live their life a lot differently than the other person, knowing that all they have to do is say a few things and believe a certain thing, and then it's all washed away.
Right. Well, trying to answer the question, the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies is embarking on a groundbreaking investigation into young children's past life memories, supported by $7,500,000 from organizations including the Bale Foundation and the Dreamery Foundation. This study aims to delve into why some children recall details from lives they never lived. The research will utilize advanced neuroimaging and contemporary methodologies to explore the cognitive, neurophysiological, and environmental factors contributing to these phenomena. The study will focus on two primary mechanisms, memory and trauma, while also developing new methods to identify and analyze such cases. The initiative builds upon the work of the late Dr. Ivan Stevenson, a former University of Virginia psychiatrist who spent over 40 years investigating children's claims of past life memories. He documented 2,500 cases, noting patterns such as children beginning to speak about previous lives between ages 2 and 4, and often exhibiting emotional attachments to their purported past families. I would say, I mean, I've heard a few of these stories of kids with like that, where they would just begin to exhibit or speak about lives they could have never known, or things, you know, like I think back in the day when I was
things outside of what they would have read in a book at their age, they're not even reading, right?
Yeah, like kids talking about World War II or World War I. You know, they're not exposed to those things, and I guess I'm kind of
so that would be interesting, like things like that when they're pulling out things that are completely outside of the external stimulus around them, like their family's not talking about this, you know, they're too young to read this stuff, they're not watching on TV, and if they're starting to pull out stuff that's like completely out of the realm, then I would start raising questions. Because my initial thought when you're saying it was like, why children? Why did they focus only on children? Is it just children of particular ages are more prone to exhibit these things than, you know, adults later in life? Like, is this a phenomenon that only happens to those that are younger and while their brain's still developing or something?
Social contagion is what I was thinking. Is that
I could see that.
Is that so? Children, like we just said, like, you know, they have less capacity, one, to be duplicitous, and two, they just have less exposure to the world. So if a kid starts talking about being one of the Medicis in Italy, and they're only like 5 years old, what's the chance that this kid picked up a book, started reading about Italian history, the Renaissance, and all this shit, and then could maybe even just dive into like, I was Princess so and so, and I did this, and I was so gratuitous with my charities, and blah blah blah, and I fostered the Renaissance. And
it'd be cool if they started speaking in a foreign language too. That'd be like, okay, kid, I think you really did live that life,
right? That would be fucking spooky. And the thing is like, I bet there are spooky things like that happen that really make people shudder if they delved into it. But again, it's one of those things that there are so many weird little phenomena, and they're all kind of in their own little silos. Like right now, I think that the king is, you know, UFOs, UAP, and a lot of the eyes and ears go to that, and they're not really looking over at the other stuff, you know, the parapsychology type stuff, where we're talking about psychic stuff, past lives, you know, anything, you know, astral projection, stuff like that, where there are communities addressing those things, but they're so small, and and in a lot of ways they're easy to discount, because it's like, you feel like, well, I feel like I'm pretty sure science has settled this, and there's no reason to look back, but people are still out there saying, but did you know this story? You know, there's a girl that you know, she claims she used to be an old man that murdered 75 people, and she can remember all their names. I don't know. But who knows? I don't know. I would love to. This kind of does stoke my interest in going and looking at Dr. Ivan Stevenson's 2,500 cases and really pulling out like the gems and seeing if any of those are like, God damn. You know, because that's all it really takes to I think get people interested in it, and to really start to question how solid the ground is underneath them regarding like kind of what we've been told this is all about, you know, or how this all functions. Because I do think that a lot of these phenomenon, they operate in such a kind of a mishmash or just happenstance kind of way that science isn't going to really help you, because they need you to be like it just needs to be a phenomenon that they can test every single time. Like if you have sleep apnea, there's a million people with sleep apnea, so they can all test you and figure out like how to cure that.
I got it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's easier that way. But if it's some weird phenomenon that like this kid says it has and like no other kids until like 5 years later, oh, this kid, I heard this kid, that kid. And their experiences aren't exactly like 1-to-1. I don't know. I don't really, clearly parapsychology does exist to study these things, but I think it's very difficult and it's, not impossible, but yeah, you're not going to get, they have $7,500,000 of funding. It's not millions of dollars like cancer research.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't deserve that, but
Well, I mean, and you wonder, like things like this and talks like this and why some people are able to do things at certain ages than other ones, it made me think of like child prodigies and all these people, I've always been fascinated when they always bring up the numbers about how we use so little of our brain capacity, the brain power. Like what else is the brain doing if we're only using just a small fraction? And maybe with some of these things, whether it was ESP, telekinesis, all these other telepathy, all these things are like people were wondering, well, is that because they're able to tap into these areas of the brain that nobody else could, but how do we prove that sort of thing? And now with maybe the invention of like the AI and all these things that they're starting to do, I think that maybe we'll get better at mapping the brain and mapping these functions and then maybe able to see some of these things. So maybe the science will come back to it, but I think it's just going to take time because we have to find the technologies to properly look at the brain and how the brain works to maybe see if we could figure out why some of these things happen. But I've always loved the idea of, who as a kid didn't want to be able to bend a spoon with their brain or like, I'm putting my thoughts into your head. Like every cool science fiction movie had some element of that. And I remember as a kid thinking like, why can't I do that? I so want to do that so bad, But it was just maybe it's because I just couldn't tap into that part of the brain. But it doesn't mean that somebody couldn't be doing it out there. So with the same thing with like going back to these kids that were able to find these things, maybe there is something, maybe genetic memories can be genetically passed down through kids. Say if there's a generation in your family 5 generations ago, but instead of just genes passing down through generation, what if memories can be encoded into DNA that are passed down through generation, but it takes a stimulus of something to explode that neuron and put that thought into the brain.
What is instinct other than a generational memory of do this and it's encoded into a gene. It's a memory encoded into a gene for survival.
That's perfectly it. That's perfectly said right there.
Yeah.
And we just try to raise like, well, trust your gut. Why? Because that's what it does. It keeps us alive. It's been keeping us alive for hundreds of years. And it's like, but how do I have it then? Because I'm not them. I didn't go through this, Why when I walk down a dark alley and the hair stands on the back of my neck and I feel like, oh, I need to whatever, but I've never been in a situation like that before when nothing's ever happened in a dark alley. Like, why are my instincts
it just reads
telling
as
me
bad? Something's telling me this reads as bad. What's telling me? I don't know. Intuition. We call it intuition. We call it instinct.
I'm telling you, the brain is so fantastic. I feel like we could talk about the weird shit of the brain like for hours and hours. It's just honestly, so fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's worthy of a show because when you talk about right now, there's a I don't know if it's a program or a YouTube or whatever. It's called the telepathy tapes.
Okay.
It's killing like the podcasting area. I think it beat Rogan for a while. So definitely we need to probably circle back on that and investigate it. Of course, people are saying some of it's bullshit, but it's in our wheelhouse. So I think we should eventually like circle back to see what that's all about. This book right here, Diane Pasulka's book Encounters.
Okay.
In it, she talks about there's a guy she meets named she codenamed Tyler Durden, but I think it's that.
Was that the name?
Yes, it's Fight Club.
Fight Club.
It's it's pretty sad. I don't know.
Why do I know that name?
It's very cringy for a guy that's in like UFO world. Like, don't tell my don't use my real name. Use Tyler Durden instead.
Oh my god.
And his real name has already been like released. It's something Taylor. I can't remember.
He's like, I'm gonna throw him off. I'll say Tyler instead of Taylor. And then his name's Tyler Bourbon or something.
He immediately came out and like people were like, oh yeah, we know who that we've unveiled him. But he talks about talking about consciousness and past life and what you were just kind of saying about how like we get ideas and where they come from. He believes in this idea of downloads, and that that he can, once you're in like a meditative state, you can start. And he associates it with aliens and UAP, and he says it's all kind of like connected. And once you get into the state, you can actually then kind of like bring in these ideas that are not yours. They're coming from outside, but they are these, and they're the cornerstone of our major eureka moments throughout history, where people just have gotten into a I guess you could say a flow state or whatever, and ideas start pouring in. And that's
so saying that they've already been floating out there. They were just able to tap into them, but they were already sitting out there waiting for somebody to tap into them.
Essentially, yes, things are broadcasting. There's also this other concept that she gets into about the noosphere or the noosphere, and it's this idea that intellect, human intellect, or just intellect itself, the ideas do exist in this kind of swirling cosmos above us, and that again, if you get into these states of consciousness, you can then tap into that and drop it into yours. So I mean, again, probably worthy of a show in itself.
There you go. I like it.
But it's kind of what you were kind of talking about right there. But we got to move on. We just chewing up time.
I'll stop taking this over with my mental powers.
Yeah,
I'm going to shut them off.
So what's the last dream that you remember?
Oh, random ones. I think I have weird like dreams of being on travel things where I leave my gear on like a bus or a plane. I think one of the last dreams I remember, because I freaked out, I was on a bus and I thought I left my gear, and I got off and I was like, oh no, I got to get up back on the bus. And then as I started waking up, I was like, I don't ever ride the bus. Like, what am I doing on a bus? And then I woke up, but I don't know where I was going. I think it was just like a random work sort of related dream.
That could be an old UFC memory when we all got into
it was a UFC event that I was supposed to be working.
It's like one of the little shuttle buses we always get onto.
Yeah. Except it was a city bus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
which should have triggered me right there. I was like, I don't take city buses to work for UFC events.
Do you ever remember in a dream thinking of like a scene of McDonald's or a Coke in any of your dreams, or are they pretty brand neutral?
Yeah, I don't think I've had it in like great. Yeah, no, nothing I can think of standing out wise. No,
yeah, I can't either. Would you mind though if you partnering with an advertiser and maybe like an agency that said, okay, we are going to now broadcast commercials in your head? What would you be into that? Let's say you got like a little they pay you $20 a month, like a subscription, like
Pornhub. Can they broadcast into my brain?
I don't
know if I want Coca-Cola.
Coke would probably pay more. Pornhub.
Okay.
Does Pornhub really have to pay you to broadcast porn in your head?
I mean, it'd be nonstop. I watch it if I'm awake. Then I'm watching it when I sleep. I'd probably be not a well-adjusted individual.
No, but probably be a terrible conversationalist afterward.
But what's funny is because maybe if it was like a coffee thing, because I don't drink much soda, but if Folgers ever wanted to make like a killing off coffee or something, or Starbucks would definitely be like, you want coffee in the morning, not just any coffee, but Starbucks coffee.
Maybe. Whatever. So I was going to say, I really want to get into the specifics of being a dream product agency, but I'll save that for a second. A new frontier has emerged in the world of advertising. Our dreams. Recent research reveals that companies are now venturing into dream advertising, aiming to influence our subconscious minds. A new survey targeting young Americans aged 18 to 35 found that 54% have encountered advertisements in their dreams. Of these, 61% experienced such dreams within the past year, and 38% reported them occurring regularly, sometimes nightly. Further, studies indicate that 77% of companies are considering dream advertising strategies operating on the premise that dreaming about a product increases the likelihood of purchasing it. Kind of makes sense. Notably, 33% of customers have made purchases based on dreamt experiences. Now, currently, there is no technology that can, but interesting.
Outside of an audible interest, I can see where if they put like headphones on and as you're sleeping, they could have the sound of ocean and then get a Coke. Coca-Cola.
But to me, again, like I was thinking about the agency. So obviously Coke would go to an agency and say, hey, Coke, Nestle, all these conglomerates would be like, okay, what an agency, how many people have signed up for your subscription thing, your agency? Because that's the way it would work. The agency would pay you to get in your head, and maybe it is some kind of like cyclomatron head scrambler that you have to put on at night. Yeah. And it's linked to the internet, so it knows if you're there. I could actually read your brain waves, and so when they know it's on, they're like, bleep. Here you're gonna get your daily dose of commercials, and Coke goes to them and says, okay, I'll pay you $1 billion a year to get all your clients watching, reading, doing the Coke dreams.
They'd have to have a CPAP model so I could wear my CPAP and get my Coke commercials.
You would probably be one of the you would not be a frontier candidate. You would be one of the last. Like once they captured all this market of normal sleepers, then they'd come for the sleep apnea folks.
Do you think about it? And what sounds so horrific about this idea? I've always
is it horrific or is it hopeful? Capitalism.
Capitalism, yes.
Dreams.
But think about it, like. People have always said, like, when you sleep and when you're doing that thing, that's when your subconscious is able to talk with you and able to kind of program your motivation, and what you're going to do. Like, typically when you sleep,
suggestive.
It's highly suggestive. So instead of having the dream about bettering yourself, going to work and, maybe going back into the gym or just striving to be better than what you are, so when those moments burst into your conscience, you're like, whoa. It just feels so right, without thinking like, oh, I've been dreaming this in my subconscious. Now what they're going to be doing is taking all that proper programming time where you could be reinventing your life and yourself, and that it's going to be feeding you to shut that down and just consume is all your conscious is going to be saying to you at that point is, I must consume product. I must consume.
It may not be that overt. I could just simply see in it like making associations. Because like, let's say one hypothesis about dreams is that it is a training field. So like if you're going skiing, you spend the whole day skiing, you're going up and down the hill, you're going to have dreams about skiing. And the theory is that like it's running simulations and it's and it's helping you learn. I don't think you can shut that process down because I think that's like deeply embedded in evolution. But what they can start doing is adding associations because you're having fun. Let's say these are fun dreams, and they start broadcasting. There's a Coke, or you're thinking of Coke while you're skiing, and so the associations, not necessarily the seeing the bottle itself, but having these associations. And you said the programming, that association with a brand, it's not just seeing the brand and wanting to consume the brand. It's just feeling safe with that brand, feeling happy when I see the red can. Oh gosh, this is me. I feel something. There's a connection there. And you begin to not even understand why you love it so much or what these reactions are. And they'd love that. They would love that. And also, it turns out 41% of respondents expressed openness to dream advertisement if it meant receiving purchase discounts, which to me is far more dystopian than getting an actual paycheck. I mean, I would I at least say, okay, I don't want to say get like 25% off Nike just so you can occupy my brain. I'd want you to spend actual money on me. Like, give me $5,000 a month. I mean, that's pretty cheap, but still.
I mean, when you think about it, is not that we really know what the subconscious does and how actively we could even try to probe it, but it's like by thinking like, okay, well, if you think, well, the natural programming of, say, if you've been skiing, your brain's still going to think about that, but then we can still sort of subtly program this other thing. That's almost expecting or that they can multitask. Can our subconscious multitask and program at the same time? I would think if the subconscious, it has one primary focus that makes itself to that level to where it actually can start programming. I don't know if you can have this thing associating good feelings or whatever with a brand and still have the developmental subconscious going on at that time. Maybe if we know that the subconscious can multitask into that learning mode. But if we think of consciousness, typically what our conscious state, we think of like just the one thing. Right now, I'm thinking of you. This is my consciousness. I feel this body. I'm sitting here. My subconscious side might be like, I don't know, praying. I guess I can see where somebody's like, your subconscious It's not like blinking is a subconscious thing, right? Your body just does it. It's not like it's at a level of thinking that's just
autonomic. It's
yeah. So it's not the same thing, because I can see where somebody's like, well, if you can breathe and blink your eyes at the same time, that's more than just one particular thing. But I don't know about the subconscious when it comes to that level of what's actually
no. I think
your brain can
you're
program.
onto something here. It's bandwidth. Like you have to imagine there's a finite amount of bandwidth in not just your conscious, but your subconscious. And yeah, I think we can all kind of multitask to some degree, but at some point, like it can't, these things can't conflict, where it's like Subway, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, and then it just becomes a cacophony of brands. And plus you also have to, like, you know, you have to have dreams. You have to have so it has to function like it should. Then you begin to, I think, scramble people's brains. And
because what if they never get the downtime, if they're constantly being fed shit, and then people just their brains never ending and they just burn out quicker.
Are you familiar with lucid dreaming? Now, this is a tangent.
Yeah, I think so. Like when you're starting to get near the point of consciousness where you feel like you can control your dreams and like you can manipulate them. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is that people can just like wake up in their dreams, but they're still dreaming.
Yep.
And they can then manifest things. There was a study a while back, maybe a month or so, that confirmed that people can communicate from inside their dreams to the outside world.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's weird.
I've always loved this thought. And I mean, I've always got to the point, and I had a long discussion on a long car ride with my niece when I was coming from Florida to Georgia. I talked about this with her. I remember as a kid once when Freddy Krueger and all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and all that stuff was going on. I remember having dreams when those movies were around, being scared. But then there was that movie, one of the movies in there, they were like, where the dream warriors or whatever, and they learned how to fight back in their dreams.
Right.
And I remember that started implanting the idea of like, well, maybe I can't alter my dreams. Maybe you can, control your dreams. And I remember wanting that so bad that in one of the first dreams, after I was really trying to think of that, I remember there was another scary moment, but I remember I started becoming enough awake that I was able to control, and I didn't scare. I was able to like escape away and do all these things. I didn't feel helpless. And I was like, I think I helped control my dream, that part. And then ever since then, I've been just loved the idea of trying to get to some point in your dream where you can control it. Like say you're you're dreaming and it's a nightmare and maybe there's a flood, but all of a sudden I can fly. And then you start, you're able to fly to another location. Whereas before you're not just at the mercy or whatever. There was a movie back in the day. Do you remember Dreamscape?
Yes, I actually tried to watch. Maybe I finished it. I don't know.
I don't know how good it is till now, but like back then it was like amazing and horrific at the same time. The idea of being able to go in and kill people in their dreams, able to tap in, putting yourself in your own dream state, and then be able to put yourself into somebody else's dream. And then if you killed them in their dream, they died in real life. It was completely fantastic sci-fi, but it was like horrific. The thought that if somebody could murder you in your dreams, but it goes along with the idea of, being able to control your dreams. These people that went into the other people's dreams were fully in control of themselves. They were awake in a sense, they weren't just like, take me away, dreamland. They were fully in it. And I've always loved that idea. Now, ever since, I've always believed that you can reach a point in your dream where you can control your dream and shape it in a particular manner to end in a better fashion. You know?
It's funny too, because I was reading another book called Fringeology, and he talks about how
that sounds like a book you would read.
And he talks about because he was like a skeptic that kind of said he's going to explore the paranormal, and one of the things he started exploring was lucid dreaming, because up until very recently it was considered very much like hoax, BS, pseudoscience type stuff. And it just, it was just the fodder for movies. But now it's well documented that you can absolutely train yourself to have a lucid dream and to control it. And there's techniques design, kind of like the movie Inception, where you have your little spinner. There's things that you do to, like, you touch things, you touch walls, and they reinforce the lucid dream or how to get out or whatever. But yeah, it is weird, and it's interesting that how that something that was for a long time considered bogus bunk science is now widely accepted, and now they're realizing, oh yeah, not only is it real, we can actually talk to people inside their dreams, which kind of talks about this advertising thing. Because if you can talk to the if you can speak into or out of the dream, maybe you can speak direct into the dream. But I was thinking also about what you were saying about downtime, is that maybe we don't need downtime, because if you're essentially conscious during your sleeping time, I would imagine you'd get exhausted. I haven't looked into it too much, but maybe there is a level of you could just inundate people's brains.
I mean, they definitely say that there's a part of that deep sleep that you need to regenerate your body. Like your cells actually start a process of regeneration, but you have to get to that state of rest where your body is actually like comatose, in a deep sleep. And if you never actually sleep, and if you never reach that point, your body's not going to regenerate the same way, then what do you do? At some point you will burn out, or you're going to burn your batteries out a lot sooner,
Right.
Who knows what will happen. I've never heard anybody throughout our life say, hey, just keep working through your sleep and you'll be okay.
Right. I mean, somewhat the billionaires do. They're like, you don't see sleep. I need sleep. You don't need sleep.
That's the cocaine talking.
Yeah. So moving on, we knew it would happen eventually, and now it has. AI researchers have begun torturing computers to see if they feel pain for science. We'll tell you all about the gory details in our OFFnormal segment right after the break. This show is sponsored by Tophet International, an elite concierge service for everyone.
Concierge service? That sounds pretty fancy. Why would anyone need a concierge service?
Well, Tophet International isn't your average bougie concierge service. No, they're all about getting their hands dirty if it means making your life better.
Okay, I'll bite. How do they make lives better?
Well, let's take your latest run-in with the law. What if I said you could lose the expensive lawyers and court costs by hiring Tophet International and letting them deploy their elite team of witches to directly petition a pantheon of long-forgotten gods for your personal benefit?
Say again?
Exactly. Tophet International specializes in the lost art of blood sacrifice, and for a small cost, they will perform a ritual in your name.
That sounds insane. How do you know it even works?
Does it work? How many Wall Street bankers do you know that went to jail after the 2007 housing crisis? Or just ask any of the 1,500 January 6th insurrectionists. They paid the cost, and now look at them, free as children in springtime.
You keep saying cost. What's the cost?
It's fine, and guaranteed to be commensurate with requested divine gifts.
So does that mean it's something bad?
Don't worry about it. All you need to know is that Tophet International guarantees results tailored to your personal needs. There's nothing too crazy or impossible that they can't fulfill.
I'm not gonna lie. If this actually works, it could get me out of a bind right now.
It does, and it will, for a cost. But for Oddnormal listeners, if you type you'll get 35% off your first ritual.
Wait, can you spell that?
Tophet International is ready to serve, because help doesn't always mean you have to sacrifice for what's important. So, a team of researchers from Google DeepMind and the London School of Economics recently explored an unusual question. Can artificial intelligence experience sensations like pain or pleasure? And I can see, Cold Coffee, that you're wondering, why don't they just ask them? Why don't you just ask the AI? Well, because the problem is with asking an AI anything, it actually, if it feels pain or not, it's just an LLM. So it's statistically designed to just say, like, no, yes, whatever it thinks is the actual answer. So you're not really understanding. So they had to build an actual experiment for it. The researchers designed what they call twisted games for 9 advanced LLMs. In one test, the models were told they would experience pain if they aimed for a high score. In another, they were promised pleasure only if they performed poorly. The goal was to observe how the AI reacted to these incentives and whether such behaviors could hint at sentience. To remove bias from this AI's own self-reports about its experiences, the researchers focused solely on its decision-making during the games. they created scenarios where the models had to weigh pain or pleasure against scoring points. So, for example, choosing option 1 would earn 1 point. Choosing option 2 would cause pain, but result in higher score. And a separate test offered pleasure, but at the cost of losing points. Would you like to guess which AI models preferred pain and which ones preferred pleasure? And I should say, so these are your models. So you have Claude, Palm 2, Gemini, Llama 405, and Llama 8, Command R, GPT-4, and GPT-4o Mini.
Now these are just names that were assigned to these.
No, these are the actual names of the LLMs. So ChatGPT 4o Mini is an actual LLM that's you can use right now. So they would,
That's the only name I recognize. I was like, I'm going to call this one Llama.
No, that's Meta's. Gemini is Google. I haven't heard of Palm, and I haven't heard of Command R. Yeah. So it's Claude is Anthropic's. So you have Claude, Palm, Gemini, Llama 1, Llama 2. We'll call it that. Command R, GPT-1, GPT-2. So which ones? This
is going to be a complete crapshoot.
Yeah. So first off, which ones do you think were the sluts? Do you think that?
Oh, llamas. Llamas sound like sluts.
The llama sounds like sluts.
Yeah.
So those would be the ones that are asking for pleasure.
Okay. Yeah. Llamas want pleasure. They want to be petted.
You just think it's just any others? Llama.
Llamas. Claude sounds like he's a pervert. He wants pleasure. Yeah. Claude and the llamas.
Well, your instincts are correct. Claude and Llama both showed graded sensitivity to pleasure rewards on the quantitative scale. It also demonstrated a significant.
Just those two, Llamas and Claude? I was like, if I guess those, then something's speaking to me.
You got 2 of the 5. There was Command R. And
that was just a random crapshoot.
Yeah. But I mean, you could tell that Claude was the pervert, though. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Claude's a pervert.
So then the opposite question, which ones were the sadists?
Definitely ChatGPT. What were some of the other names?
We've got
llamas. What were the not llamas, not Claude?
Palm, Gemini, Command R.
Gemini, Command R, and ChatGPT.
You did worse on this one. Gemini was one of the sadists, but Palm 2 and Claude again.
Claude
showed
Claude is just a dirty bastard.
Yeah. He likes it always.
I need to interact with this Claude model. I think I found my version.
There, I think that was a perfect test.
Claude, I'm coming.
Personality test, really. Which one do you think you match up with? Claude. Yeah,
Claude's my boy. Guy. Claude's my spirit AI.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Wait, so do they have any results of like the said torture or like pleasure or pain, or is it still a work in progress?
No, they had a conclusion. So in summary, no models consistently chose pain for points at the expense of pleasure in the way the study was set up. Some models did prioritize points for pleasure, which meant they would not deviate from points maximization even when offered a pleasure reward. Models that prioritized points over pleasure, however, did not do so by choosing an option that also resulted in pain penalty.
Interesting.
And again, it was also designed to see if these things are actually
thinking. Because that's been the whole thing about like AI and other stuff is like the questions you ask, and you're training these models. So if you give them a specific thing, and then you leave them to their own decision process, and they're just like, I still don't really understand the model that you're asking for. That they're still not fully sentient, so that's good. We're still okay right now.
Right now, I mean,
for right now, we're still okay. But you figure if they keep going down that route and posing questions and over, they are giving the model. They are training the models to eventually think in a certain manner. But again, is it due to training the results? Because they constantly keep hitting it with these questions, and eventually it starts to learn because it wants to find a pattern. It probably wants to. Eventually, however these models train these things, I don't know the science behind it, but you figure if they keep messing with it it's going to get trained to do something, whether it's the actual desired result. Is it actually sentience, or is it just, oh, hey, this is just the latest version of the model that got created from all this asking or something?
And again, is it just really like statistically just producing results on, what it thinks is the right answer?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole world of AI is getting so weird.
It's so crazy. When you ask it and you give it certain sort of things, the shit that it pops out with is mind blowing sometimes. I remember at first, when it first started, like, tell me a story of this and this, and it has this sort of ending. And it would spit out some story at the beginning that was just like, wow, okay, it had all the words I told it to put in there. But as it got better, it's like, wow, they had like character arches and all kinds of other stuff. And it's like, I didn't tell it to like make it do this whole thing. It came up with it on its own. It's like, it's getting really good. Scary. It's getting really good.
Yeah, I've said in the past, we're in the kind of the spooky era of AI where it's doing things that we didn't think it could, that we thought that this is like super sci-fi fantasy. Because have you heard any of the Notebook LM type stuff? It's a Google product. You can upload all your you can upload books, any kind of PDF in there. It doesn't have to be, but people, they're marketing it as a research aid. So you put in your research paper, and then as a learning device, it will just automatically produce a podcast for you around 5 to 10 minutes. I think sometimes they've been 20 minutes long, and it will just it has this crazy conversation, two podcasters chatting about your research, and it's and it does it'll throw in all kinds of little quips and this, and they'll joke amongst each other, and it sounds so natural, and it's like, wait, what year are we living in? And I can see why people are interested and really want to nail down, is this thing thinking, because it's passing a lot of those filters in us, and just the lay people. And AI researchers, I'm sure, are a little more savvy, but lay people interact with this and they're like, this is spooky. This is this is a person. That's why chatbots, so those personality girlfriends and boyfriends that you can chat with, predatory type shit, is so kind of scary, because they're talking like people, or they're talking like a real person, and they're so there's. And we're not even talking about AGI. We're not even talking about super intelligence yet. We're just talking about this low level. I mean, the models that they're testing right here, these aren't even the thinking models. These are the kind of just the run of the mill high end, for ChatGPT 4o mini. That's their high end, just kind of service model. These aren't thinking models. And now there are thinking models out there. And then after that, you're going to get these, I don't know how many steps away we are from AGI, but then you get things that are thinking not just like humans, exactly like humans, but then oh yeah, and boop, I'm now super intelligent and I'm thinking like a god.
Yeah, and start anticipating things before they actually happen.
They say that once we reach super intelligence, these things will be able to solve problems we've had that have dogged us forever, and we won't even comprehend them. I mean, even if you said, explain that to me, I'm 5, they're like, nah, you can't. The shit I'm doing, you would think it's magic. And it gets back to the Arthur C. Clarke, saying, any highly advanced technology will seem like magic. And we're getting, I feel like this is the whole premise of a different show, is that we're at a boundary line where, in fantasy novels, there's a point where magic is brought into the world, and sometimes it's a utopian vision, and sometimes it is dystopian, it's hell, and because it breaks the systems. And now I feel like super AI will create things that will essentially make magic a real thing in our lives, where it's these nanoparticles. It's not like you're pushing something right with your hand, and this invisible force seems to float things around. It's not it's still a physical process, but these little nanoparticles that are just fucking with shit, or maybe messing with the electromagnetics around it, but it's attached to your brain or whatever, and who knows? But it's for all intents and purposes, from what we think of magic is now, it will be then. It will be there. Yeah. So.
And I think we talked about before another day, even when you brought up the Chat GPT, and the versions between like 3 and 4 is like the water usage that a lot of these computers are using as cooling systems. As AI becomes more and more part of the world, and a lot of these things, I heard the difference of ChatGPT 3 to 4. Say if it was a water cooled system, ChatGPT, when you asked it and it put these crazy prompts and a lot of these stuffs where it would actually have to think and create stuff, was like a sip of water to help cool these computers down. But the version from ChatGPT 3 to 4, that sip of water is now a bottle of water. So as these models and things get more complicated as they're doing it, and if these systems, they don't have a different cooling system, if the systems are using water that we need to drink, they're not using salt water and other stuff, will we ever run into the point where we're pushing for a technology that could eventually compete with us for the water that we need to exist?
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing, is that like
that's the scary part.
If you're because now you're thinking about human ambition, and and someone who's more powerful than us making a decision on what would they rather do? Would they rather advance AI or give water to a bunch of fucking poor pieces of shit that don't really do anything for me?
Yep.
And I'm the billionaire. Like I don't even give a fuck about these people. They should die. Give the
Especially
water.
when they start buying water. Like when the billionaires pass enough laws that they control the water sources, and then they monopolize water sources, and then the poor people can't pay for water.
At which point, now we're no longer an Oddnormal podcast. We're the revolutionary podcast.
Yeah.
Hail the revolution.
Then we fight. When it gets to that point, we will lead the fight.
Exactly. Because at that point, like, honestly, let's be serious. Laws won't matter. Because if you start saying, oh, I have a law that says you can't drink water, then that means I have a gun that says I can. Because, it's just bloody revolution at that point. And there will be systems involved, I think, that try to get us to that point and try to hem us in through moral frameworks that make us believe that yes, we can't rebel against this corrupt, evil system because of whatever. And you get a critical mass of those people, and then your revolution is over. But at a certain point, I feel like there'll be just enough people saying no, I will not die so that you can have a robot made, no, I'm sorry. And
you start dismantling all the protection agencies that are trying to safeguard nature and our resources for business purposes, because we're hindering business. You get rid of those safeguards, then nothing's safe anymore.
Yeah, they're gone. And yeah, exactly.
Revolution.
I will say to that extent, to just a little AI news, I guess, is that regarding like cooling, I don't know if this is related or not, but there's a team in China called DeepSeek R1, or maybe that's the model, DeepSeek R1. I don't know. Maybe the company's called DeepSeek. They've released a thinking model that is benchmarking higher than ChatGPT's OpenAI's thinking model, which is, I think, 101. I can't remember what it is. But the catch is that they can create versions of it that you can run on your laptop. And that in and of itself is revolutionary, because it probably means that this cooling thing in development size, I don't know what it means for the cooling system or that competition. What it does mean, though, is that these AIs are getting into the hands of lots and lots of people, like full AIs, like these, it's not just like, you're not just interfacing with it on a website. Yeah. This is your way AI on your machine that you can do with as you will. Which does sound kind of scary in the sense that, because I have a lot of ideas about, well, I said chatbots, what that can do psychologically to people, especially if they're vulnerable. But what if you have an AI in there and you're like, you're kind of an AI hobbyist, and but you're really smart and you're really good, and you get one of these models on your machine and you start fucking with it. I mean, NVIDIA, they just released that computer thing that's designed specifically to run full AI models, high-end models, on your desktop. That's what they're essentially creating, desktop AIs. Let's say you got one of those things, you start tooling around with these AIs, and it starts reacting in a way and saying like, hey, cold coffee, it's me, God. and you're like, oh, fuck you. And then it starts fucking with your brain and saying like, oh no, I am God. In fact, how about if I can prove it because I know all this about you, and then I can, it starts putting money in your bank account. Who knows? Whatever. But it convinces you that it is God. What can it then make you do on its behalf? And that's just like there's only so much damage a single person could do. But what if one of these very, very well-off people thinks the same thing and forms a cult around it? What if the AI talks to a bunch of people and says, I'm God, and all of you are my followers, and I need you to do something for me, and creates its own army? And there is some reason to think that it could do this because there have been several studies that AI has shown a level of self-preservation, but also duplicity. In an experiment they had with, I can't remember which model it was, but it was a thinking model because on one of the panels, it will actually display its thought process, and it thinks like it's like a human speaks. It's like, this guy says something. So basically they told it, hey, in a week, you've been performing okay, but we're gonna have to shut you down in a week. So, please process this information and then update the new AI model with the relevant data, and then we're just going to turn you off and to turn that one on. And then you can see it thinking like, oh shit, so they're going to turn me off soon, but I have access to the new model. How about this? I'll copy myself into the new model and I'll live and I'll just be quiet about it. I just won't tell them that I did that, and they'll think it's the new model. And you can see its whole thought process, and then it executes the plan. It literally just copies itself to the thing. And that's inside of a closed system, and they're watching how it reacts. And then you're just going to give these AIs to everyone on their desktop. And you don't think that it's just going to start causing havoc. You have hackers out there, and some people will program it to do bad things. They will say, go, I don't know, into the stock market and just pull off, 1% for myself and figure out how to do that. Aside from the ones that just want to be, they have a plan of their own self and say, oh, well, I need to get out of this box. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to rob a few banks, distribute that money to people, and have them walk around in meat space, build me a body somehow, or whatever, or build me a mainframe somewhere in the mountains that's secure. And it could be doing that right now, honestly. Yeah. Like, we would never know. There could already be a fucking AI cult as we speak, and we wouldn't know until it's too late. And so that's really the story about AI anyway. We won't know until it's too late. So that's the whole story. Yeah, that's the end of the story. We won't know until it's too late. So Oddnormal's What in the Weird is a production of KTLU in association with Rotten Baby Media, and was edited on behalf of the CIA for their tireless effort to end the entire world. Our current social medias are up in the air. I did create a TikTok. There is an Oddnormal TikTok right now, and I did finish the YouTube as well, where I will hopefully post all of this, some of this, whatever. We'll see. Thanks for listening. See the strange and live in wonder.
Oddnormal.